Farer has a way with color. I don't think they have a boring watch in their entire collection. Reds, blues, greens, oranges. I don't think they have a monochrome watch anywhere on their website. They're a brand who year after year puts out eye-catching model after model. And I want to talk about why their watches call out to me so much. I also just want to show off beautiful macro footage of this watch. So let's talk about Farer. Founded in 2015, Farer proudly touts British design and Swiss quality all over their website and marketing material. And over 10 years later, those words have solidified into true strengths. I heard one of their co-founders say that if you were to cover up the dial on any of their watches, their goal is that you would still be able to recognize a Farer for a Farer, and I think that's true. Across a dozen models, each in various dials and treatments, the Farer style is recognizable. I think it distills down to the colors that they use. They're playful, they're bold, colors that so few other brands approach. They stand out. In this video, we'll talk about Farer, but mostly, like I said, I just want to gush about their design. Specifically, I want to show off this watch, my limited edition Farer Lander Chronograph. I bought this in 2019, and I think it's gorgeous. I mean, come on, look at that dial. How could you not like that dial? Like I said, I think there are so few watch brands that embrace color like Farer does. The only real comparisons that I have are Nomos and Zenith. But I don't think either of them approach what Farer's doing. In interviews with Paul Sweetenham, who's one of the co-founders of Farer, he talks about how much inspiration they get from mid-century cars. After World War II, after the world was able to pull itself out of that desolation, fashion and design across industries were changed. A new joyful language was embraced in design. It was in defiance of the darkness of the years that had come before. And Farer pulls so many of their color inspirations from this era. Specifically mentioned are Leyland color charts. And these are colors that were used on British automobiles in the early 60s and 70s. Think Land Rover, Mini, Austin Healey, Triumph, and the colors that these automakers settled on light up my brain. As samples on a chart, they look great, but realized into actual vehicles, they're incredible. This chart is a treasure trove, and I have to imagine that Farer aren't the only ones pulling inspiration from these mid-century colors. Now, from what I've found, this is Farer's most famous dial treatment, Lander. This ever-changing sea green with a sunburst finish. Day to day, moment to moment, this dial is always playing with light in ways that you hadn't noticed before. Out in the sun, on a cloudy day, in the office, you twist your wrist and notice that not quite blue, not quite green shift in such a pleasing way. It is really difficult to do this dial justice in photos and video. Now, this treatment is a standard option on their GMTs, but in the case of this watch, it's a limited release for a previous iteration of their chronograph. And we don't have to search far to find the inspiration behind this dial color. It might not be on that Leyland color chart that we talked about, but damn does a Porsche and Fjord green look good. Now, if I had to guess, Farer's Lander GMT has to be their highest selling watch. The combination of that ocean dial, the burnt orange hands, the white mint numerals, it's eye-catching. And the Lander Chronograph carries these aspects over, but adds in a white telemeter and two large subdials at 9 and 3 with this very special radial finish. Those subdials play with light even more than the sunburst dial. At one glance, you'll see a dark blue shifting into light oceanic green. It catches highlights in a way that the rest of the dial just doesn't. And the combination of the two complement each other in such a nice, dynamic way. Oh, and there's also a color-matching date window. A nice extra touch. And even the bezel is color-matched. The 3 o'clock dial shows running seconds, while the 9 o'clock displays the chronograph's 30-minute counter. Now, usually, counters on chronographs are paired with tachymeters for measuring how fast your race car is going. I have never actually used a tachymeter for its intended purpose, but the idea is that you start and stop the chronometer over a unit of distance to measure how fast you're traveling. A telemeter, on the other hand, is something that I find more useful and I've actually used before. You're measuring distance of an event. So you see a flash of lightning in the distance. Start your chronograph. When you actually hear the thunder, that's when you stop your chronograph. Check wherever your second hand falls on the telemeter, and that is how far away the storm is. Now, if you can tear your eyes away from the dial, there are a few other details I'd like to point out. We have a 39mm stainless steel case that is both polished and has brushed recesses. The crown is bronze, which seems to set some people on Reddit off, but I'm a fan. The watch has a slightly domed sapphire crystal, has 200 meters of water resistance, and a display case back for showing off a customized ETA 2894-2 movement. Now for Farer's modern chronographs, they've actually switched out the ETA for a Sellita. Earlier I mentioned that tagline that Farer likes to tout: British design and Swiss quality. You'll notice it says Swiss made on the dial. And those ETA and Sellita movements are indeed Swiss. The watches themselves are actually made in Switzerland by Roventa Hennigs. This is a private label Swiss manufacturer, and they are pretty secretive about who it is they actually make watches for. I don't know much about Roventa Hennigs, but I can say that I am impressed with the attention to detail and quality with the Farer piece that I have. And I think the watch world has moved away from the trepidation around micro brands. The name micro brands itself is pejorative. In music and movies and video games, we call these small companies independent, indies. Anyway, I feel like there used to be a bit of hesitation on whether or not spending a nice chunk of money on an indie watch was worth it in regards to value, quality, or, brand cachet. I think we've moved beyond that. Buy a watch because you like it. And in the case of Farer, I like what they make. And they actually have a 5-year warranty to back it up. So if you're interested in one of these watches, don't let fear of it being a micro brand or poor quality or value be a deterrence to you getting one of these pieces. Farer makes a solid watch. As I said, this watch was a limited edition, and unfortunately, you can't buy it anymore. You can't even find it on their website, which I think is odd. For a company that has as many limited runs as they do, you'd expect an archive page to browse through their prior glory. Now, while this watch is no longer sold, there are so many alternatives that I have my eyes on. We already mentioned the Lander GMT, but what if you want a chronograph like this one? May I introduce you to the Bernina titanium case with its white ceramic bezel and red engraved text? Did you own a brown Zune in 2005? Well, I have the watch for you. This must be the only titanium chronograph with a brown sunburst dial on the entire market. Want something a little more classy? Try this incredible green sunburst dial, or the black with just the right pop of color in the hands. Oh, not in the market for a chronograph right now. I understand. Farer has incredible field watches, moon phases, dive watches, world timers, GMTs, and so many more. Each line comes in variations so distinct that there is always at least one that grabs my attention. Compared to some of you freaks, I have a small collection of watches. It's growing, slowly. For the longest time, my Farer Lander Chronograph was the nicest watch that I owned. I got it when I turned 30. Around the time when my first child was born, I wore it the first time I held him. I've worn it so often since then. I've received a surprising number of offers from people to buy this watch off of me. And I'm never going to let this watch go. Yes, that dial is awesome, and I think that's what catches people's attention. And you combine that colorful dial with the memories that I've put into this, and this watch just makes me so happy to look at. There's something to be said for a classic. I love a black dial dive watch. I really hope to own a Rolex Submariner 14060M one day. It is a classic for a reason. There's something to be said for elegance or subtlety. I love those kinds of watches too. But I think we could all use a little more color.